Let's talk about something people shrug off way too often. Disrespect. You know that moment when someone talks to you sideways, brushes off what you said, or takes a cheap jab and pretends it was nothing. Yeah, it's not nothing. It's never nothing. Disrespect is one of those things that sneaks in quietly, almost disguised as a joke or a harmless comment. But here's the twist most people miss. Every time you tolerate it, you're sending a silent message, not just to them, but to yourself. And that message sticks. Today, we're breaking down the 7 reasons you must never let disrespect slide. I'm talking real-world psychology, clarity you can actually use, and insights inspired by thinkers like Carl Jung, minus the heavy jargon. And trust me, some of these reasons are going to hit way closer than you expect. Especially number 6. Most people don't even realize how dangerous that one is until they're already deep in the consequences. So buckle up. By the time we're done, you'll never look at disrespect the same way again, and you definitely won't tolerate it. Let's get straight to it. The very first reason you must never tolerate disrespect is that you're teaching people what's acceptable. Every time you brush off a comment, downplay something that bothered you, or stay quiet just to keep the peace, you're setting a silent standard. And people pick up on that faster than you think. You know how it goes. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence during a group discussion, and you let it slide because you don't want to derail the moment. Or someone makes a snide remark about the way you handled a task, and instead of calling it out, you try to laugh it off so things don't get awkward. Maybe someone dismisses your idea in a meeting without even considering it, and you tell yourself it's not worth bringing up. Those moments feel small, but they stack up. You ignore the interruption, they'll interrupt again. You laugh off the jab, it'll turn into a running joke. You stay silent when your contribution is brushed aside, your future input starts losing weight. Carl Jung pointed out that our behavior and boundaries shape the identity we project to the world. When you tolerate disrespect, even unintentionally, you're shaping a version of yourself that communicates, "This is fine." And once that message lands, the dynamic locks in. What should have been a single moment quietly turns into a pattern, and pulling it back becomes way harder than stopping it early. And here's where it gets even more serious. This isn't just about what people do to you. It starts affecting what you believe about yourself. And that shift is where the real damage begins. The second reason is this. Disrespect quietly rewrites your self-worth. Here's where things start hitting deeper. Disrespect doesn't just shape how others treat you. It starts shaping how you treat yourself. And the wild part is, it happens slowly enough that you might not notice it at first. Think about those small moments you brush off. Someone dismisses your point before you even finish talking, and you tell yourself it's not a big deal. Someone takes credit for your work, and you convince yourself it's better not to make noise. Someone uses a condescending tone with you, and you decide correcting them would feel too confrontational. Each time you let one of those moments slide, your internal meter shifts just a little. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually you start viewing yourself through the lens of what you're tolerating. It's like a quiet rewrite happening in the background. You go from expecting respect to hoping for it, to settling for whatever you get. And here's the kicker. When you allow disrespect externally, your inner voice starts adjusting to match it. You stop backing your own ideas as strongly. You hesitate before sharing your thoughts. You second-guess things you used to be confident about. Carl Jung emphasized how repeated experiences shape the way we see ourselves. When you tolerate disrespect, you're reinforcing the idea that you're someone who has to accept it. And once that belief takes root, reversing it becomes a much heavier lift. And here's the twist most people don't see coming. Once your self-worth shifts, everything else gets affected. Your standards, your decisions, your tolerance level. That's when the domino effect really kicks in. And the third reason? That one shows exactly how quickly those lowered standards start spreading into every corner of your life. The third reason is this: disrespect lowers your standards long term. Here's where things start getting sneaky. When you tolerate disrespect, even once, you're not just dealing with a one-off moment, you're adjusting your dial. And once that dial moves, it almost never snaps back on its own. It starts small. Someone talks over you and you let it go. Someone throws a sarcastic comment your way and you decide it's easier to ignore it. Someone repeatedly undermines your decisions, and instead of addressing it, you just try to work around them. At first, you tell yourself you're being flexible or easygoing. You tell yourself you're choosing the mature option. But what's actually happening is this: your threshold is slipping. Bit by bit, you become more tolerant of things you would have called out instantly a year ago. And here's the part people rarely notice until it's too late. You start normalizing it. You start thinking, maybe this is just how things are. You adjust your expectations downward without even realizing it. You abandon standards you didn't even know you'd lowered. Carl Jung talked about the power of long-term patterns and how repeated experiences shape what we see as normal. When disrespect becomes a pattern, even a subtle one, you adapt to it. And once you adapt, you start making decisions based on those lowered standards. You choose different environments. You accept different treatment. You filter your choices through a weakened sense of what you deserve. And the scariest part? It doesn't just affect how others behave. It affects the type of behavior you actively expect. Because once disrespect becomes familiar, you stop questioning it altogether. And the next reason shows exactly how this shift drains something even more valuable: the mental energy you need to actually grow. The fourth reason is this: disrespect drains your mental bandwidth. Here's where the cost gets real. Disrespect doesn't just hit your mood, it hits your mind. Hard. Even if you try to brush it off on the outside, it sticks to the inside like static, pulling your attention in 10 different directions. You know the cycle. You replay what happened while you're trying to focus on something else. You rethink what you should have said in the middle of doing something totally unrelated. You catch yourself analyzing the tone, the timing, the intention, long after the moment has passed. You're in the middle of working or studying or planning something, and boom, your brain drags you back to that disrespectful comment. Your mental energy gets siphoned off without your permission. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 100 tiny thought loops. And the worst part? None of that thinking leads anywhere useful. It doesn't resolve anything. It doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't move your life forward. It just keeps you stuck in the mental replay booth. Carl Jung emphasized how our inner focus shapes our outer experience. When disrespect hijacks your attention, it narrows your mental field. Suddenly you're spending valuable energy managing someone else's behavior instead of investing in your own progress. Before you know it, you're mentally exhausted, not because your day was full, but because it was full of someone else's negativity. And here's where it gets even heavier. Once your mental bandwidth is clogged, you start reinforcing patterns you don't want, which leads directly into the fifth reason. And that one shows how these repeated moments reshape your psychological defaults in ways you don't even see happening. The fifth reason is this: disrespect strengthens the wrong patterns. This is where things move from annoying to dangerous. When you tolerate disrespect repeatedly, you're not just dealing with isolated moments, you're reinforcing a psychological pattern. And patterns once formed don't stay small, they grow. Here's how it works. You experience disrespect. You excuse it, ignore it, or minimize it. Your mind registers that response as the default. And the next time something similar happens, your brain automatically leans back into that same reaction. It becomes a loop you never intended to build. Carl Jung talked about how our repeated behaviors carve grooves into the psyche, almost like mental pathways that become easier to follow the more we use them. So when you constantly let disrespect slide, you're carving a path that leads straight to automatic acceptance rather than healthy confrontation. Before long, you're not even pausing to question the situation. You're not evaluating whether the behavior crossed a line. You're not asking yourself what your boundary should be. You're just reacting the way you've been conditioned to react. The real danger? Once these patterns set in, they don't just dictate how you respond to disrespect. They affect how you respond to challenges, criticism, opportunities, and even your own goals. You start shrinking your reactions, your voice, and your presence without realizing it. And here's the twist. While that internal pattern is forming, something else is happening on the outside. People start to read your silence as lack of boundaries, which brings us straight to the sixth reason, and that one shows how tolerating disrespect doesn't just change you, it changes the environment around you. The sixth reason is this. Disrespect signals to others that you're unprotected. This is the one that hits hardest for most people, and it sneaks up quietly. When you tolerate disrespect, you're broadcasting a message, whether you realize it or not. This is what I accept. Think about it. People are always scanning for signals. Not consciously, not even intentionally. They just pick up cues. And your reaction, or lack of reaction, is the loudest signal of all. If someone pushes a line and you ignore it, they learn they can push a little further next time. If someone makes a sarcastic remark and you laugh it off, they see a green light for the next jab. If you stay silent when your contribution is dismissed, your input starts to lose weight in everyone's eyes. It's like setting up invisible road signs. Go ahead, no consequences here. Carl Jung emphasized how repeated experiences form patterns that shape not just the individual, but the social environment around them. And that's exactly what happens here. When you tolerate disrespect, you're unintentionally shaping the space around you and letting people dictate the rules. The kicker? This doesn't just affect the person being disrespectful, it creates a ripple effect. Others start testing boundaries, assuming that if you let one person slide, you'll let them slide too. And suddenly, what started as a few small moments escalates into an environment where disrespect feels normal. And this leads directly into the seventh and final reason. Because at this point, it's not just about reactions or signals or mental energy. It's about your growth and how tolerating disrespect can block it entirely. The seventh reason is this. Disrespect blocks your growth. Here's the big one, the game changer. All the previous reasons we've talked about, training people, rewriting your self-worth, lowering your standards, draining mental energy, reinforcing patterns, sending the wrong signals, lead to this. Tolerating disrespect keeps you stuck. When you let it slide, you're shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's behavior instead of expanding to reach your own potential. Your confidence gets chipped away. Your focus gets divided. Your decisions start being influenced by what others are doing to you instead of what you want to achieve. Think about it. Every time you accept disrespect, you're putting up a tiny barrier between yourself and growth. And those tiny barriers add up, until suddenly you're not just dealing with disrespect, you're dealing with the consequences of stalled progress. Carl Jung said our repeated experiences shape our psyche and our life path. Disrespect isn't just a momentary annoyance. It's a repeated experience that slowly rewires how you engage with the world. By tolerating it, you're letting something external dictate the trajectory of your own growth. The takeaway? Boundaries aren't just rules for others. They're the foundation for leveling up in your life. The moment you start refusing to tolerate disrespect, you reclaim mental space, confidence, and control. and from there, everything else becomes sharper, clearer, and more aligned with what you actually want. Alright, so now you know why you can't tolerate disrespect. But let's get into the real question. What do you actually do when it happens? Because knowing why isn't enough if you don't have a game plan. 1. Stay calm and observe. First things first, don't react instantly. Take a breath and watch what's happening. Ask yourself, is this a one-time slip, or is it a recurring pattern? For example, if someone interrupts you in a meeting, instead of snapping back immediately, pause and decide whether it's worth addressing in the moment or later. Or if a colleague makes a sarcastic remark, notice how it lands. Are they testing boundaries or just being careless? Staying calm gives you control over the situation. Reacting impulsively often escalates things and plays into their hands. 2. Set clear boundaries. Next, call it out. Politely but firmly. Say something like, I don't appreciate being spoken to that way, or please don't dismiss my input like that. Another example. If someone takes credit for your idea in a group chat, reply calmly. I want to clarify that I was the one who proposed this. You don't need to justify or over-explain yourself. Simply state your boundaries. Clarity communicates respect for yourself and signals to others that certain behavior isn't acceptable. 3. Remove yourself if needed. Sometimes people don't respond to boundaries. And that's okay. Step away. For instance, if a coworker keeps making cutting remarks during a project discussion, excuse yourself and return when the conversation can be productive. Or if a client or partner is being condescending in a meeting, step out to regroup instead of letting it derail your energy or confidence. Disengaging isn't weakness, it's protecting your energy. Sometimes your absence is the most powerful message. 4. Don't over-explain or over-apologize. Disrespectful people often try to bait you into overreacting. Avoid it. Keep your responses short, clear, and consistent. Example, someone mocks your approach to a task. You don't need to defend it with a long explanation. Just say, that approach works for me, and move on. Another, if someone sarcastically critiques your work, don't over-apologize. Simply acknowledge and continue. Less explanation equals less opportunity for manipulation. 5. Protect your mental space. After an encounter, don't let it replay endlessly in your head. Protect your focus and energy. Go for a walk, take a short break, or switch to a task that absorbs your attention. Example, if a meeting left you frustrated, don't stew at your desk. Take a few minutes to clear your mind before diving into the next thing. Your mental energy is valuable. Don't let someone else steal it for free. 6. Reinforce positive patterns. Every time you enforce your boundaries, you're shaping how people treat you going forward and reinforcing your own self-respect. Example, if a teammate interrupts you and you calmly assert yourself, next time they're less likely to interrupt. If a peer dismisses your input and you clarify your contribution, they'll start recognizing your voice in future discussions. Respect attracts respect. Consistency is the key. Every small act builds a pattern that makes you stronger, more confident, and less likely to tolerate disrespect in the future. All right, if you've made it this far, here's the real game changer. Boundaries. Think of them like guardrails on a road. They keep you safe and on track. Without them, disrespect can just veer in and start wrecking your day, your mindset, and your growth. 1. Be clear and specific. Vague boundaries don't work. You need to know exactly what's off-limits and communicate it clearly. For instance, instead of thinking, I don't like it when people are rude, you could calmly say, I don't appreciate being spoken to in that tone. Or, if someone keeps cutting you off in a meeting, try saying, I'd like to finish my point before anyone responds. It's simple, direct, and leaves no room for misinterpretation. 2. Consistency is everything. Boundaries only work if you enforce them every single time. If a teammate interrupts you once and you push back, but the next time you let it slide, it undermines all the effort you just made. Or if a peer teases you and you laugh it off occasionally, they'll test again and again. Consistency trains people how to treat you and reinforces your self-respect. 3. Practice saying no without guilt. Saying no doesn't make you rude or difficult. It makes you intentional. Maybe someone asks you to take on another task when your plate is already full. Instead of overcommitting, you calmly say, "I can't take that on right now. I need to focus on my current priorities." Or if someone keeps speaking in a condescending way, you can say, "I'm not comfortable with that tone. Let's keep this professional." No explanation, no guilt, just clarity. 4. Use body language and tone to reinforce words. Your words matter, but your presence amplifies them. Standing tall, keeping your tone calm but firm, and maintaining eye contact sends a signal that you mean what you say. If you mumble or slouch, your boundary loses power. When you're clear in your posture and delivery, people notice, and it makes them think twice before crossing the line again. 5. Treat boundaries as self-respect, not punishment. Boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about controlling your space, energy, and standards. When you enforce a boundary, it's not about being confrontational. It's about protecting yourself. Stepping away from a heated discussion isn't avoidance. It's giving yourself room to stay in control. Saying no or calling out disrespect isn't aggression. It's self-respect in action. Boundaries aren't just tools. They're your shield against disrespect. Use them alongside the strategies for dealing with disrespect. And you're not just reacting. You're protecting your energy, your self-worth, and your growth. Because the truth is, disrespect won't disappear on its own. Boundaries give you control over what you allow into your life. But here's the bottom line. None of it matters unless you actually use it. Disrespect isn't just about other people. It's a mirror. It shows you where your boundaries are weak, where your self-worth needs reinforcement, and where your mental energy is being drained. Every time you tolerate it, you're choosing a slower, harder path. Every time you refuse it, you reclaim control. So here's the challenge. Start small, but start today. Call out the little things, enforce your boundaries, protect your energy, and watch how quickly your environment and your mindset start to change. Confidence, clarity, and growth don't come from hoping people will treat you better. They come from showing the world what you will and won't accept.